we have to be blocked. When I first got around and started talking about these things, people were come up afterwards and say, okay, scientific research proves it. But how do we get rid of these blocks? How do I start living this unbounded full potential better? So that's the key. How do we get rid of these blocks? So that's what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn today how to get rid of blocks and how we can actually achieve this potential of creating miracles. So, where are these blocks? That's the next the next question we have to get to. Where are these blocks? Well, basically, the blocks come from early childhood experiences. And the blocks are there because we had experiences when we were growing up that somehow changed our ability to be ourselves. And let me give you some examples. The easiest way to do this is give you some examples. Because the blocks are very important to understand. Because if we're going to learn to manifest the life of our dreams, we've got to learn to somehow get rid of these blocks so that our thoughts can create the miracles that we know they can do. Now, to be quite candid with you, most of our blocks happen because of our parent situation. When we grew up, most of us had parents that did the best they could. Most of us had parents that loved us but didn't know how to show it. A lot of them came from the generation right after the war and that depression. And they had to do with a lot of they grew up, they didn't have a lot of stuff. They didn't have, they didn't have shoes, they didn't have, they had hand-me-down clothes. So their idea of giving people love was to give people the things they never had materially. Now, they weren't given any instruction on how to be a good mom and dad. They weren't told that kids need hugs and kisses and all those kinds of stuff and need to be told they're loved. As a matter of fact, a lot of them thought the best thing they could do was to make their kids independent so they could be strong. Because life is tough. And that's what they did. That's how they showed their love. And what happens is when a little kid doesn't get the love he needs, perceives it, then he starts thinking there's something wrong with him. He starts internalizing it, right? That's how little kids are. And later on he looks for love in other places, and finally he grows up and he realizes his parents did indeed love him, they just didn't know how to show it. And they sacrificed a lot of stuff so that they could get to where they want to be. In other words, they sacrificed their time. They're working themselves to the bone so that they make sure they were taking care of the children. The parents wanted to give to the kids what they never had, materially. So, during this process, when a little kid starts growing up without enough love, and kids do need things like hugs and kisses. There was a kissing study. They did a kissing study on this kind of gives us an idea on the value of affection. They did a kissing study. What they did is they took couples who kissed each other, gave each other a little kiss in the morning, and couples who didn't give each other a little kiss in the morning. And they followed these couples for 10 years. And they did all kinds of measures. They tested them out physiologically, heart attacks, need for drugs, and all that kind of stuff. And they found that this little simple thing, giving a little kiss in the morning, was a great predictor of quality of life. If a husband and wife gave each other a little kiss in the morning, then what happened was they ended up far more happier, far less heart attacks, far less need for drugs for depression and things like that. At the same time, they had far less diseases, far less deaths, compared to the couples that didn't give each other a little kiss in the morning. So we do need these little things of affection. And when a kid doesn't get affection, dad doesn't come to the games because he's too busy making money to make sure the kids have what he never had, then what happens is kids internalize it. They start thinking there's something wrong with them. Okay? First thing it does, he thinks there's something wrong with them. Now, when the kid starts, the next situation, of course, is when he grows up. What is going on during that time when the kid starts thinking there's something wrong with him? His brain is being formed. And what's happening is the brain is actually being formed, so there's brain pathways that are being formed. And those brain pathways are self-doubts and things like that. Okay? So these self-doubts are going on in your subconscious. So let's say you're starting to attempt to make a positive affirmation. or you want to create a miracle, or you want to use positive thoughts to create something. Now, you start to have these creative thoughts, or positive thoughts. Meanwhile, in the back of your mind is this old self-doubt because your mom and dad didn't love you. So what's going to happen with this positive thought? It's going to fall flat on its face because of the old self-doubts that were there, wired into your brain because of your childhood. Does that make sense? Okay? So that's how this whole thing, I went into details like that because a lot of what goes on inside ourselves is subconscious. Where there's defense mechanisms in our brain that protect us from pain. But they do their job so well, they actually push down the pain so that you no longer remember it. They've done, how many people have known, couples that get together, they break up, and then 6 months later they're back together again, and 6 months they break up again. That's because people forget all the bad things, remember all the good things. It's suppression mechanisms. It goes on all the time. There's cases where people have had sexual abuse when they were kids, and they no longer remember it because they've suppressed it. Later on, the memories start coming back. So these suppression mechanisms do a very, very good job of protecting us. But at the same time, they keep the old stuff, the old wounds from being healed. And when these old wounds are not healed, they sit there and they percolate. Now, these old wounds go on in something called the reptilian part of the brain. And the reptilian part of the brain is the part of the brain that protects us. It's called the fight, flight, and freezing response. Now, we've all heard of the fight and flight, but what is the freezing? Anybody know what the freezing response is? Can't make a decision. Good. That's good. That's a good response. It's when you can't talk. Let me give you an example of the freezing response. Let's say you're in a relationship, and you get in a knockout, drag-out fight, and you come down for breakfast, and you're sitting across each other at the breakfast table, and you wish you were 1,000 miles away. And you know you need to talk things out, but you can't make yourself talk things out because for some reason you can't talk. You know you need to talk to get back to that flow, but you can't talk. And so that is the freezing response. Okay? Can't talk. The reason you can't talk is because talking means that you'll get close again and you'll be more vulnerable to being hurt. So you freeze up. It's a protection mechanism. It's a protection mechanism, okay? So these protection mechanisms actually keep this old stuff from being healed. But let me give you another example of the freezing response. Let's say you want to go to your boss and ask for a raise. And you're starting off, you have this intention to go to see the boss. You go to work and all of a sudden you say, I'm not in the right mood, I'll wait till tomorrow. Then you go in the next day and you go talk to the boss. And he's, it seems like he's in a bad mood. Just, I'll talk to him tomorrow because I don't want to rock the boat. So you keep doing this. And what happens is, over time, you never ask the boss for a raise. Now, this is called procrastination. This is also the freezing response. Okay? You're starting to understand how this thing works. And the freezing response is because, now why would you be afraid of talking to the boss about a raise? Remember I talked about this old stuff from childhood? That when you didn't get the love you needed, what happens? You just have self-doubts about yourself. Okay? These self-doubts then are sitting there percolating because they've never been healed. And whenever you want to go talk to your boss, yes, I deserve a raise, what's going on? The old self-doubt starts to come back into you, hitting you, and it's keeping you from going forward and talking to the boss. The self-doubt is, my own mom and dad didn't love me, I'm not really worthy of a raise. Is that making sense? Okay? So that's how these old subconscious stuff defeat our ability to manifest things in the real world. All right? These old subconscious doubts. So that's what we're going to be working with today.